Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
If pizza is the coolest thing that involves the word cook, what is the second coolest thing?
I was not expecting to go in that direction, but I'm assuming you're talking about Tim.
Yes, Tim Cook, because Apple have achieved their 100% renewable energy target. Last year they were at 96%, and now they have announced just recently they are at 100%. What this is made up of is Apple Park, all their data centers, all their retail stores, completely powered by green energy. As I said, last year 96%, and they've over 8 years they've gone from 8% up to this 100%, which is just incredible. This does exclude third-party suppliers, which is a given, and manufacturers, but Apple are convincing them to switch. So the fact that they got there, it's amazing. It just gives me that extra sort of sense of pride in being such an Apple fan. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think two things on that. One, that it's happened in 8 years. That's incredible movement and progression by Apple. And then secondly, the fact that they even think about or acknowledge that it doesn't include their suppliers, it just shows that they care about the whole ecosystem rather than what goes on paper. I've seen a few haters online about this, and
of course,
yeah. So I think the only thing that I'll just clarify is that all in all, their net usage is 100% renewable. Obviously, in some scenarios, they can't actually guarantee that they're using clean energy source. So what they'll do is they'll buy back that energy, clean energy. So they're pumping back into the system, if that makes sense. So overall, 100% of the energy that they use comes from renewable sources, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Even if they're not using it 100% of the time. I could word that a little bit better, but effectively, if they were to be using 1 kilowatt of coal, they'll just buy 1 kilowatt of clean energy to even it out.
The main thing is as well is that they've got into a fair bit of detail on their newsroom article about this. So if you want to get all the details, definitely head to the Apple website with the newsroom there. Because it's not just one of those things where it's they've put out a headline sort of thing. They've got all the evidence to back it up, and some pretty cool pictures too. Like it was probably around a year ago when we were looking at those environmental focused animated Apple adverts, and there's the one about the yaks and giving them space for the light to come through, for the grass to grow, for them to feed on, and they've got the photo evidence of that. And yeah, I thought it was cool. It's just great to see it progress, see them reach this target, and then now people, the Apple enthusiasts like us are talking about, well, basically the packaging is the next thing, which is something that they covered in their sort of environmental report about a year ago. Yeah,
and how cool is the newsroom? It's such I actually just love the way that they put really high quality pictures. And it's just, I always love the structure of it too. It's like today Apple announces, and then this and this and this. And then they've always got a summary about what Apple is as a company, and then just when things go on sale and stuff. It's actually a good read. If there weren't dedicated Mac bloggers and Apple bloggers, I would, be perfectly happy reading about it there on the releases. But yeah, anyway, moving forward, there were some other releases, right?
Product Red. There is a Product Red iPhone in 2018. But not iPhone 10, as the rumors suggested. So we got 8 and 8 Plus. Basically, the main difference this time around is there is a black front, which is what a lot of people were requesting from last time. And it's actually, funnily enough, being iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, it has the glass back and that. But when at first glance, I was like, oh, well, they've gone with full aluminium. And I was like, oh, no, of course that is glass. But basically, the difference in red between the glass over red and the actual aluminium side is very minor, that it just gives this cool overall, same shade of red. And I would love to see it in real life because it's going to certainly have a different impact along with the black front as opposed to the sort of red and white candy style one last time. So have you managed to check it out yet?
I absolutely can't wait. It's, that deep red. I know last year's model was a really deep red. I was really surprised. So I really can't wait to see how it looks in real life.
So what do you think about the fact there is no iPhone 10 model?
I'm not surprised because of the different materials. It's a lot harder to get a finish on a stainless steel product. Yep. And especially with something like red, it's quite difficult. So I'm not surprised at all. I really didn't expect it to be on 10, and as such, I didn't really expect it to be on 8 and 8 Plus. But yeah, it does make sense that they've not made it on 10. I wonder if that could also be the reason why we haven't seen gold.
Yes,
just to do with that stainless steel finish.
Yeah. What do you think about the fact that well, actually, let me rephrase that. I'm glad that they went with complete red and not a light shade of red for the back panel, because that would come off as light salmon and that would look horrible.
Yeah. My guess is that they try many, many combinations. We know that they've been doing product red for a number of years, but each shade is a little bit different, and they definitely try out a few versions. My theory was to you earlier, given how good this black front phone looks, I had to imagine that they didn't even try the black front for the last year's model, because they had always gone red and white, and I suppose that went unnoticed with small volume products like the iPod Touch or relatively small volume products. But yeah, so it seems like, oh, let's try it out, and then once you see how beautiful it is, minus the fact that we've been trained not to like bezels, it is quite striking.
Oh, and what's even more striking is the advert itself. It
is so good.
Love it. Yeah, it was like a car commercial, like a high-end car commercial, just in the way that the red sort of beams of light were running over it, and yeah, it makes you want, like when they first showed 8 and 8 Plus, we were like, wow, this makes you want a what's essentially same design iPhone, and then this makes you want it again. It's amazing what a color difference can do.
Yeah, it's quite unique, and I mean, obviously, like in the big cities, I do see more of the, I tend to see more of the niche sort of things, or at least things that start off as niche, like Apple Watches, AirPods, and, different color phones. So I've seen a couple of red iPhones around, but definitely I can imagine if I pulled one out at work, it would definitely get one or two questions. So it must be nice to be one of the owners of a product red, but for me, at least at the moment, partly because there's an iPhone 10 and partly because my iPhone 10 is only 5 months old, I have no set plans. I was thinking about getting one for an unboxing video, but then, all the influencers already got theirs now, so you kind of lose like the competitive advantage from being in Australia anyway, so...
Yeah. What do you think about, like, is this just going to set the expectation in that March, April 2019 will be another product red release? And do you think people would hold off on buying in September, in anticipation?
You have to wonder.
Yeah. You
have to wonder. If it was any other company, like say Samsung, right? They had the active model of their S phones for years and years and years, and it always came out a few months later, and you could bet that it would, if you loved that phone, you would get your active. I don't think that you can take the same bets with Apple. You never quite know if this is a long-term strategy. Even my favorite thing to think about when I think about Apple flip-flopping on stuff is the iPad naming scheme, where they had like iPad 2, 3, and then it was iPad 2, and then stopped, and then kind of like went to iPad Air 2, and then stopped again with the numbering. So I just don't know. But yeah, I hope, like I was actually thinking about that earlier, and I was like, oh, well, then I would have an iPhone 10 for about a year and a half, and that would be appropriate to upgrade. So maybe I would maybe it would just fall into my cycle, but I can just imagine myself being, in March, halfway through March thinking, well, it's just not coming, and then getting something else, and then it comes out 2 weeks later.
It's just Apple keeping us guessing. What they did also come out with a little bit of a surprise additions was a product red leather classic buckle watch band, which was very cool. A red folio case for iPhone 10, so that way there is some form of product red for iPhone 10. And one thing that just always kind of irks me is just the fact that the Beats product red is such a different type of red.
Yeah, I think that's okay because it's different branding.
Different branding, yeah.
Yeah, I think so many people don't know that Apple owns Beats.
Yeah.
I would say the large majority of Beats diehard fans wouldn't even realize that Apple owns Beats. But yeah, so definitely in terms of like, you realize that Apple owns Beats, it makes a difference. But I like that shade also. It's quite an interesting thing. I like it when Apple plays around a bit, especially when it's not so serious, it makes it a bit more fun.
Except for Space Gray, because nobody knows what Space Gray is.
I don't even think Apple knows what it is. Like, they probably, I shared that tweet a couple of weeks or last week where it was like final one, final submitted,
yes,
blah, blah. It's they must have that for the Space Gray shade that, a new designer comes in and they're like, oh, pop Space Gray on. They don't even know what Space Gray is. They just go find like, oh, that looks like the latest one. It's ridiculous. But, on the classic buckle, I'm almost certain they had a red leather classic buckle last year. It's likely it's a different shade, but they definitely had one.
I wasn't quite keeping track of it, but it didn't. When I saw it said new, I was like, oh, I'll just take that for their word. But yeah, either way, cool shade. No black lugs. That would be cool if they did black lugs with that. Black.
I was just thinking that.
Red body.
I was just about to say that. I would own it right now.
Speaking of which, I actually went out and ordered a third-party band from America with black lugs. So
have you considered just buying just black lugs from eBay?
Not yet, just because I've ordered this band and it's about half the price of Apple's bands. It still looks good. It's from the brand Nomad, and I quite like the look of it. And so we'll just see when it arrives and see if I can hack wearing a non-Apple watch band, but. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't see that lasting, just because of your like particular need for design, and I've found that third-party bands don't quite get it right. But so hopefully it is good. But if not, you should definitely try out getting the eBay lugs because they come with a little screwdriver and stuff. It's pretty easy to take off for the leather band ones anyway. So,
interesting. Now, speaking of watch bands and the spring collection, which was mentioned in recent episodes. What have you acquired, you and Michelle?
We both got the new Sport Loop bands that Apple made. So Michelle got the marine green, which is really, really nice. It's kind of like this turquoisey blue marine green. Anyway, it's
some form of aquatic.
It's quite light, but it's more blue than green. It's really nice. It's a little bit on the feminine side. So, I mean, I think if you like bright colors, a guy could definitely pull it off. But it for me, it was a bit too feminine. But I ended up I had my eye on the cargo and khaki, I think the naming is. Sport Loop, that's the Nike Plus edition, like version.
Yes.
And I have no regrets. I love firstly that it's just one solid shade. So I know they mentioned that it's dual color, but in real life it just looks like this solid shade of dark green, and it's beautiful. I just love how it looks from the moment that I saw it online, and then even more in person, just more and more enjoying it every day. I don't wear it to work. It's a little bit too informal, but I wear it Friday to Sunday. So yeah, it's really, really nice and really comfortable. So definitely if you or anyone who's listening is keen to check out those bands, I would recommend that one. And I always love wearing the Sport Loop. It breathes well. It's comfortable. It looks pretty good. So I also got an iPad 10.5 inch Pro.
Oh, yeah. That was the little casual surprise just thrown in there.
So I think, like, I've waited so long, but my iPad was on its last legs. And I'd had that for 2 years, and I know that there's a new iPad coming out relatively soon, but unfortunately both my previous Pro models, the 12.9, which Michelle uses, and then my 9.7 are just playing up, and, keyboard's starting to fail, and it's just like not quite my iPad experience that I know and love. So I decided, okay, I'll sell that, got, a couple of $100 for it, which was, fair enough for the fact that it was 32 gigs and, Wi-Fi only, and then decided to get the 10.5 inch Pro. So I get that now, and then when the new model comes out, it will be, passed down the line. So I'm enjoying it so far. I must say the speed improvement is great, but yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and you gained an iPad, and I lost one. Well, I don't lose one, but I've sold one in my bid for to get a decent price before my fingers crossed, hopeful arrival of a redesigned iPad come WWDC, but we'll see. Okay, so moving on to the rumour mill.
Just on that, just before the rumour mill, what happens if there isn't one at WWDC?
Well, it depends. Do I cave and get the new iPad that they just recently released just to get some Apple Pencil action, or do I wait it out? I'm not sure. You kind of planted that idea in my head, so.
Yeah, it is only, you could get the base model and it's not too expensive, and you probably wouldn't lose much on it because it would still be a relatively new model. So you'd effectively, let's say, pay $80 to use an iPad for the next 6 months, because at most we would probably see one. But the other question is it's just been redesigned. So what if you don't get a redesigned iPad?
It will happen, Nick. All right, don't crush my dreams.
I'm trying to remain hopeful but cautiously optimistic.
Yes. Okay. Cool. All right. So bring us to the rumour mill with the Mac. There's always kind of been talk about, will Apple eventually bring their own chips into the Mac and ditch Intel? And now it's kind of looking a bit more likely, and it's supposedly known internally as Kalamata, which I was instantly attracted to because I love olives. And it's apparently they're in the early development stages of basically trying to map out the switch between the current Intel chips into what will they produce to run Macs with. Now, I feel like this directly relates to the idea of the cross-platform Mac OS and iOS apps, which is known as Project Marzipan, which, as a little side note, I feel like it's too early. Both Lance and I said that. But do you think there would be any hint of this cross-platform system at this year's WWDC?
Yes. I'll just go with yes, just to, throw a spanner in the works.
Okay, cool. I hope so. I hope so in a way to give developers a long heads up, about the platform, given that Apple have been sort of more and more, pre-announcing things over the past year and a bit. So I hope so. Anyway, yeah.
I think they can pre-announce things where other things are sort of like not affected. I think if they do announce Marzipan this year and it does end up relating to the fact that they're ditching Intel, I definitely don't think that they'll even mention the fact that it has to do with ARM processors yet, because obviously they're a massive customer for Intel. And that just wouldn't go well. So I think, I wouldn't expect that they would be open and upfront that this is going to lead to a change in processor.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, if you're asking, well, what's the whole deal with this? Well, obviously, like both Nick and I have spoken about, how great Apple's design chips are. Particularly with the sort of benchmarks and that you're getting from your iOS devices. And basically, by having an Apple design chip within a Mac, aside from any performance enhancements, it also helped make a seamless hardware-software experience, particularly when you're talking about designing apps one way to run on multiple platforms. So I am super keen for this. There is the Apple designed T2 chip in the iMac Pro. They have started to make their own GPUs as well. For me, of course, you had not too long ago, the Intel chip security vulnerabilities. And just, basically with the sort of leaps and bounds they've been making with benchmarks and performance with iOS devices, as soon as they release a MacBook Pro with an Apple chip in it, sign me up. I will buy it day one.
Yeah, there's also the element that they've been including the T1 and T2 chips inside the MacBook Pro and the iMac Pro for fingerprint authentication and for bootloading.
Yep.
And so there is this start towards that, and certainly that indicates that they would do, that they are looking at doing more and more with the chips. So it's definitely, I definitely think this is going to happen. I wonder, firstly, does it happen across the whole product line? Is it, overnight, well, here we go, we've redone every single Mac product, and now all the top of the line ones are using our own chips, and these are the great improvements? Or do they first continue this dual processor sort of thing and do more and more and more until really at some point in the future, this just becomes the primary processor, Intel secondary if it exists. And so, just to expand on what you're saying, like definitely a sign me up situation, because you will be getting performance improvements. Apple wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't substantially better.
I think if they were to roll it out on a laptop level, it would happen at separate timings for the MacBook Pro line and then the MacBook line, but it'll be within the same year. That's sort of my guess. There's also the talk of, when should we expect this? And I think realistically 2020 onwards. So continuing on the Mac vein, there was a recent TechCrunch interview approximately 1 year after the Pro focused sort of interview that they had at Apple. And this one was with John Turnus, who's VP of Hardware Engineering, Tom Berger, who's Senior Director of Mac Hardware Product Marketing, Judd Copland, who's Director of Video Apps Product Marketing, and Xander Soren, who's Director of Music Apps Product Marketing. All people I'd never actually known before, but it's always good to get to know who's behind the scenes at Apple, aside from the senior VPs.
John Turnus was the guy who announced the iMac Pro at WWDC 2017. He was the guy that was going through the whole iMac lineup. So we have seen him on stage. Quite a cool guy, it seems like.
Thanks for the reminder there.
super passionate about the iMac, that we can say, or the Mac lineup.
I think the hard thing is that you basically, when it comes to a keynote, you're looking out for your key players, your favorites. And so I unfortunately had forgotten about him, but I kind of want to go back and watch the presentation now, because I do remember him being really passionate about it.
Yeah, I watched these presentations like 6 or 7 times. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so what they did in the interview with TechCrunch is they did a bit of a recap about what happened with MacBook Pro and iMac Pro. The big detail to come out of this is that they have stated the Mac Pro is not going to arrive before 2019. So it kind of goes against my predictions earlier in the year of hoping it's going to be this year, but yeah, they've come out and said it. Interestingly, though, they mentioned that they have an Apple Pro workflow team. So what this is they've hired high-achieving creative types on a contract full-time basis. These are made up of like award-winning artists and technicians and such, and they're there to push the hardware to its limits, find any pain points, take that information back to the architecture team. They address any bottlenecks, and the cool thing is this is not exclusive to like benchmark performance and that. So an example they gave is that there was a 3D animator who frequently used this particular window that for doing tweaks to his animations. And he basically said that the window is taking 6 to 10 seconds to load each time. He does it 100 times a day. You add all that up, and that's taken X amount of time out of his productivity. And Apple look into it. Turns out it's graphics driver related. So they're kind of taken this real hands-on feedback approach to pretty much produce the best Mac Pro that they can. So this is kind of like it's like, well, rather than release that a little bit too early and it not be 100% of what they envisioned, they've sort of assembled this team. They've assembled their own little Avengers as such, to basically find the little niggles and iron them out.
You kind of need to separate this from being something like a focus group. It's like a focus group, but on steroids and over a much longer period of time. But it is a departure from what we might expect Apple to do. so traditionally they obviously decide where things go and how the market moves. So they obviously realized that with the Mac Pro, they made a huge mistake and maybe needed to get some more customer feedback. It's a really unique way of doing it. And I don't think you can say that Apple doesn't care about their pro customers if they're hiring top performing professionals to come and do this. One of the things on this, I've been developing using Xcode on a 12-inch MacBook, and one of the sort of features of that is this thing called the storyboard, which is just designing the UI and connecting the UI elements to the code. And every time I open it up, it takes 10 seconds to load, and it is quite frustrating. But I just figured, hey, whatever, it's just the fact that I have a 12-inch MacBook. These things are going to happen. If I wanted real performance, I should get a Pro version. Mm-hmm. And I follow a lot of Apple people on Twitter, and I was running through my tweets, and I saw that original quote about this workflow team's improvement in the guy's graphics driver, and then it was quote tweeted and basically just saying this guy is using storyboards in Xcode. So it turns out that my pain point is not just the fact that I have a 12-inch MacBook, but really that Xcode has this issue, and it's just funny that they find this driver issue with third-party software, and you're right underneath their nose in the tool that they're using to fix that. They have made this a very similar issue. It's just quite ironic.
Yeah, it's given me a whole new sense of confidence in their focus on the Pro lineup. I, of course, won't be in the market or wanting to buy a Mac Pro, but I am really excited to see it. What they said that hasn't actually changed is there is still the sense of it being modular. To what level, we still don't know. They said the inclusion of the Pro workflow team didn't actually change the roadmap too much for the Mac Pro, but it's kind of as we were stating before, it's helped shape a really well thought out Pro platform. So, you got a lot of tech people out there being like, how long does it take to put together a desktop computer? You could do that over a weekend. It's like, well, that type of comment doesn't even stand. They're trying to develop something new, and they want to make it the best they can and not have, what turned out to be limitations with the previous trash can design, and that sort of thing. So I'm really keen to see what it looks like, and I hope it works out really well for them. And yeah, this Pro workflow team, it's got me extra excited for it.
Yeah, and the same people who are calling for, how long does it take to make a computer, were also saying that they would like to see a just video editing version and a just photo editing version. And if Apple did that, I would cry, because the whole thing about Apple is simplicity and focus. And just having 6 different named versions of the same thing, video edition, it would kill me. I would hate to see a Mac Pro video edition. Rather make a computer that through its specs you can customize, but ultimately is just a one size fits more than just what people think is a professional. Because we've had this discussion many times on the show, but I did also again like to see that Apple acknowledges that coding and development is a pro use case.
They definitely covered that with iMac Pro. So I imagine they'd follow suit with Mac Pro. Funnily enough, that slight little difference in the two names there is that for a tech site as high profile as TechCrunch and the ones that were actually in charge of the interview, their URL for the story had iMac Pro in the naming and not Mac Pro.
Yeah, that crazy.
Yeah, and so I took a little eye out. I was like, maybe they just set up a redirect. Nope. Got a little missing article message there, but anyway, maybe someone will let them know. But speaking of impressive things at Apple have gained 2 new high-profile employees, funnily enough, from backgrounds of rival companies. So can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, I suppose it's not uncommon for people in that sphere to move around, but these are Well, one particularly I am aware of that is a really big hire. So I'll start with the other guy. He's used to be Amazon CTO. So obviously, Amazon has a massive cloud infrastructure. We're not really talking about we're not talking about the Amazon website, really. We're talking about Amazon Web Services, and that will be. So basically, he was a CTO. Now he's been hired in a VP role, in a software role at Apple, and he used to work at Google and HP. At Google, he was the executive of advanced technology and products, and then at HP, global head of software. So definitely got some cred, John McCormack.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to drop his name.
Yeah, it was coming.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I don't really know what this means for Apple. It's always important to have people like. I think this will be more back-end stuff, more helping Apple with their infrastructure, that kind of stuff. We know that Siri has, at least under the leadership of everyone except for our best friend Craig, really struggled with it as to scale its infrastructure and get like across what the latest technology is. So hopefully he will be involved there. But obviously there's so much going on at Apple that we don't know, like really officially know about. Marzipan, this move to Intel, move away from Intel and all of that. So we'll wait and see, but definitely a good hire. And then more importantly, they've hired the ex-Google chief of search and AI, John Gianandrea. There we go. John
or JG, as he's referred to.
Yep, that's how I was preferring to say. Yeah, so he's like already known in Tim Cook's email saying he's known as JG. So henceforth, by me as JG2, we're best buddies. So he'll be head of machine learning and AI strategy at Apple. So this obviously of intense interest for me because it's my space, and certainly. So for me, a lot of what happens in this space is quite interesting because the underlying technology should learn by itself. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. So some certain applications like Google's AlphaGo and that sort of thing do actually learn on the fly, but he'll really help shape Apple's strategy. So and actually help them move Siri and other AI forward. Now, I would like to distinguish between different elements of Siri. So there's Siri Search, Siri Suggestions, and then Siri, the voice assistant that...
A visit to apple.com should be able to help you with that.
Yep. So, I mean, I don't know if that will come through on the mic, but anyway. So, essentially, Apple, I think that everything, if we just put away the voice assistant for a moment, the proactive suggestions and Siri Search, especially if you look at Siri Search suggestions when you go into Safari, I'm finding that I very rarely have to use Google these days when I'm using that bar on Apple, on my iPhone or my iPad. So it's certainly making tracks, but you can, so JG was in charge of making the Google Knowledge Graph, which connects all the pieces of Google's search engine to basically map out relationships between things. So this will really be useful at Apple, obviously, and someone who's already done it before can obviously shape how it's done and advise how to do it at Apple. I don't know what sort of data you need, but Siri obviously receives millions and millions of search queries a day too. So we'll see. I really am excited for this. So he'll report directly to Tim Cook, which is interesting, and that indicates that he's not only working on Siri. He may well also be working on Apple's self-driving car. There are a whole bunch of applications for machine learning, but he'll be reporting directly to Tim Cook. He used to be CTO at MetaWeb, which was apparently had a lot of ex-Apple employees, which was acquired by Google in 2010. Yep, as I said, he was the leader in Google's Knowledge Graph. And then he also Tim Cook states that JG shares Apple's commitment to privacy.
Yes.
So this was the biggest
That's a big
question.
one. Yep.
Yeah. Because obviously he's coming from Google, which everyone knows is kind of like a Facebook where, they take everything that they possibly can and connect the dots and suck it up and, map people out and sell advertising to those people at a very granular level because they know so much about people. So Apple, as we know, does not collect as much information and certainly has anonymized or de-identified information when they do. So this was quite important, and it's good to see that it won't be a shift in Apple's strategy, but just trying to take what they already have and move that forward.
So, if that's kind of what his role could be with Siri, do you think that by them hiring him now, that will affect anything they have planned for WWDC this year, given that it's a short amount of time between?
No, I think that he will be looking at a much bigger picture. So I know a couple of people were saying, now hopefully HomePod will be able to have multiple timers. And that's just kind of not the stuff he's going to come in and solve. So
exactly.
Especially things that, it's quite a process to make a machine learning model. It doesn't just sort of happen in 2-3 months. He can certainly help shape things or move things, but I don't see that sort of impact happening in the next 2 months. I think there will be improvements to Siri, but not as a direct result of JG just yet. And we'll probably be looking at a 1 to 2 year horizon before we really see his impact at Apple.
Yeah, I still am feeling quite confident about the level of that Siri will play at WWDC this year and kind of the need for it, and hopefully they can just roll out little things like the multiple timers and that, like little things that just seem so obvious. But yeah, it's this shouldn't worry people in the sense that, is he just going to convert Apple to like the Google way to in terms of accessing data to advance the system. And I just think it's going to be, Tim Cook stated that he does share their same commitment to privacy, and basically it's just going to be using his knowledge and seeing ways that he can make the connections and all that sort of thing to just improve these things as simple as just getting the right answer and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm keen to see how that rolls out. So yeah, they've acquired 2 Johns, and it'll probably be, as you said, a year plus to kind of see any obvious impact of their hiring.
That's not to say that we don't have exciting things coming for Siri soon,
exactly.
Because ultimately, I think that the current state of affairs can't have been what lured him to Apple. I love Siri and I use it every single day, so many times a day. And so for me, I'm like, this is not a complaint. It's just the public belief or public, there's a certain word I'm looking for. Public perception of Siri is not that high. And I just think that if he wasn't convinced in that meeting and that there's some really exciting stuff for him to work on, because obviously he can go anywhere, if there wasn't some sort of draw for him, he wouldn't have come. So I'm excited to see, how did they get him there? That will be exciting.
Final little side note with Siri is because you know how you can trigger it with HomePod for anyone's voice. I had the HomePod sitting there, we're watching something on the TV. A guy on the TV said, "Are you serious?" Siri then lit up, and then another guy on the TV responded to the character on the TV saying, "What did you say?" And then the HomePod went, so it was like the show and the HomePod were having a conversation with each other. So that was quite funny.
I've actually noticed that the HomePod film with Spike Jonze, it's directed by Spike Jonze, that doesn't trigger Siri. So in the same way that Google has like a cancel out for their own ads, so does Apple for that advert. And I'll be interested to see if you've had the same experience. But one of my HomePods lives right next to my TV speaker and has been completely not triggered by it. And I watch that ad once a week.
Yes, it is very good. I didn't actually get to discuss it with you because Lance had stepped in at that point, but yeah, love it. Very good. Something else that I love, which you originally put me onto, is the app, and we're shifting to the appetizer segment, 1 second every day. So if anyone follows myself or Nick on our personal accounts, you would have seen the results of this app. So basically, what is it? It's a timeline of your life. So you take a 1 second video snippet each day, hence the name. It was the number one paid iPhone app in 2017. Currently has a 4.9 out of 5 star rating. So how it works visually is it's kind of like a calendar style layout, and you basically can use existing video or you can shoot within the app. You can also use images as well. You can actually add an additional snippet per day and extend it out to 1.5 seconds. As a way to, not forget to do it, you can set little daily reminders, and they're quite creative. They sort of put through little quotes and stuff that pop up. There is a dice roll feature, which will just sort of like auto select footage for you. But basically, the process in which you create your videos is via mashing. So you can do a month, an entire season, or even years. My first experience of seeing this was when Nick's other half basically did a year of 1 second every day, and that was really cool to see. So I got into it pretty much soon after that. You can also take little private notes in there, and if you haven't quite shot your video the right way, you can rotate and zoom it very easily when you're selecting your snippet. So, before I sort of run down my experience of it, how have you found this app?
This is one of my favorite apps that is not a stock app. I'll give the background in how I came across this app. So, I love podcasts. That should come as a surprise to nobody. And one of my favorite podcasts, or one of my first ones, was TED Radio Hour, which is a really great podcast. It's completely different to obviously our podcast. And the one thing I've always thought about TED Talks is that they really pie in the sky and they're not actionable. And what this podcast is about is taking 5 TED Talks, curating them under one theme, and making something that's actionable or more, that elevates something greater than the sum of its parts. And so one of the speakers was, I think his name is Carlos. I'll double check on that one, but I think his name is Carlos, and he is a founder of 1 Second Every Day. And after listening to him speak, I went and watched the TED Talk itself, and I was inspired by the video. And right through at that moment, we were going through a change in our lives, and so this was initially a way to help document that. So as $8 Australian download at the time, I don't know what it goes for at the moment, but it was easily the best $8 that I've spent on an app. And in terms of design and everything like that, it's really cool. I love the app, but I'll just stick to using it. And so obviously Michelle is a massive user of this, but I was the one that put her onto it, and then she's put so many people onto it.
Yes.
That I think we've referred like over 10 people that have actually downloaded this app as a result of seeing it, which is by far the most people that have downloaded an app because of like something I've seen.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a really incredible app. And just to paint it with a broad stroke, every element of the app, from its notifications to its design, I feel is authentic and really well thought out and unique.
Yeah, I certainly really enjoyed using this app, and I mean, aside from the fact that I paid for it, even if it was free, I'm sure I'd still be using it to this level. So it was actually funny that you should point out that you were sort of like the instigator for the app originally, because I had thought that it was sort of like you got it from Michelle. And then, anyway. So basically, she'd done her video, you had done your January video, and then on February 1st, I'd then purchased the app. I was like, right, I'm gonna do mine. So I've done a February and March video since. Love using it. And I find experience-wise, the design is very easy to follow. It has sort of this semi-cartoony UI. Only downside, I get why they did it, is that it's fixed to landscape. I get why they did it, because in case you want to shoot the footage within the app, you're obviously going to want it to be landscape by default, but yeah, it's hardly anything. I'm used to it now. And yeah, I mean, as I said, it is a paid app, so when you pay for something, you tend to stick with it for longer. But it'd be interesting to see, how long it keeps going for. I'm just really keen on kind of like building myself up to February next year, then having an entire year's worth. So I'll be very keen for that. And what's also cool is that I've started to actually tag the 1 second every day, or the hashtag 1SE. And their accounts, they're sort of resharing videos and awarding people for like best videos with free shirts and such. So yeah, I'm kind of gunning for a free shirt 1 month, hopefully. So
yeah, they are really engaging. And as I say, at every touch point, it feels authentic, from the reminders with quotes or like information or teasing. I just find every part authentic. And that comes back to your downside, which is the fact that it's landscape only. And I like that, because you do want your video in landscape, and most people don't shoot in landscape. So the fact that, they've thought long term, and in 20, 30 years time, you will actually want a proper video, not just like some phone shaped video. So, and I find that unique. I just enjoy that it's different. Every other app sort of mirrors a design or mirrors a workflow, and this is just completely different. That does mean that there's somewhat of a addiction curve that you need to get into the habit of using it.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a lot of fun and so easy to use. I feel like I don't have to explain it to anybody. You just say download the app, and then next month they like posting their things, and it's just awesome. And then the last bit on it is it's also helpful for us because we obviously move around quite a bit, and Michelle mentioned something to me which is like, for me, it's really special. She was saying that one day that we could show our kids every single day that we lived in Sydney, which was really, really cool, because I just can't think of another way to actually share the experience of living in one city from beginning to end. So it's been really good.
It's basically just a very easy, natural way of having your own video journal. And yeah, I love that. And I love seeing kind of like, what you guys have been up to and what Melbourne's looking like for you and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's, I've actually found my struggle is having to cut things. So I record, like 5 cool little clips in a day, and I can only use 2 little snippets from them. So I kind of have to, sometimes I've had to cut out some footage of my children, and I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry. I do actually love you, but
yeah. And then on that, it's both a challenge, and then also it's a challenge to sometimes find a clip. So it will challenge you to actually do something more exciting.
Yeah.
And then also a challenge to cut down and actually find the most important.
I think what's also cool is on the couple of days I have forgotten stuff, I know that I'm going to have at least an image to use. And when you do select an image, it just applies that little Ken Burns style zoom effect to it. So it still kind of carries on with the flow of the video without just having suddenly a static image there. So that's a cool little sort of iMovie style addition there. And that brings us to the end of episode 48 of Apple Slice. If you'd like to subscribe and you haven't already, just search in your player and you can get all the details and see all previous episodes as well at appleslice.com.au. And Nick, for anyone that doesn't know by now, we are part of which network?
The Ozcast network. That's AUSCAST network.com. So they're really good to us, and they have a whole host of other great podcasts that you should check out.
Yeah, and they're always growing as well, so you can keep checking back and see something new. Or just follow them as well, because they help support each of the podcasts that are part of the network too. And in between episodes, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're not quite into the podcast players and prefer YouTube, you can listen to the episodes there as well with some cool little audiograms. So that wraps that one up. I will give a little sneak teaser that I have a cool bonus episode planned, so stick around for that hopefully next week. But yeah, anything else to add before we sign off?
Yep. So we mentioned a little while ago that there was a product red classic buckle. I don't know if you've checked your messages since we've been on the podcast.
I saw it pop up.
I sent you. I went back onto the most useful tool, which is the Internet Archive. Wayback Machine and found from last year there was a red classic buckle, but it wasn't labeled product red. I think the ruby is this year's one.
Oh, okay. Yep. Cool. I'm just looking at it now.
Yep. So ruby is this year, and then last year it was like a lighter shade and not labeled product red. So just a FYI, interesting on that one. So I was half right.
The ruby does look good. Yeah, looks very nice. All right, Nick. Thanks for the conversation, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.